Right, Shalom. First, I'd like to give all praises unto Yahweh Shem Yahushai, and double honors unto the apostles and elders at Great Millstone, and honors to you brothers out there in the highways and the byways teaching this word in all sincerity and truth. And this is just going to be a quick update on the situation out here with the Brexit. And I just want the people out there to understand that when you're dealing with these matters which arise in the news and that are getting full coverage on every news channel and every newspaper, just know that whatever it is happening is a psychological operation which is controlled by the elites. And pretty much that's what this Brexit thing is. It's a giant psychological operation. It's in every newspaper. It's been spoke about on every news channel constantly, consistently, and it's on the minds of the people. Okay, now David Cameron, he's one of the chief men who are campaigning for Britain to stay in the Eurozone or a part of EU. Okay, he basically is being accused of scaremongering because he made statements to suggest that by Britain leaving the EU, it would lead to economic collapse and a possible war on the continent. Okay, now you got to understand that he wouldn't be saying such things unless he was told to say that. And this is all a psychological operation because they're preparing the people's minds, whether they believe it now or not. They're preparing the people's mind that in the eventuality that, which is very highly likely, that the yes vote does go through, they can use that to trigger off the beginning of the economic collapse in Europe and worldwide, and then subsequently the beginning of World War III. You know, to lead, different situations will happen leading up to that. But this Brexit could be like a black swan event, could be a trigger for all the dominoes to start falling down much quicker. And in doing so, ultimately, what they could do then in the afterthought, if they had the opportunity, once the dust is settled, to say, look, we told you and we warned you and we told you that these nationalistic views, okay, the anti-globalist, anti-elite views and actions would lead to destruction, and therefore the answer is a world government led by the elite. And they've already set it up, so I'm gonna play the video from David Cameron. I'm gonna insert it right here.
It'd be interesting if it was one or two organisations were worried about leaving, but the fact is every international organisation with any stand
let's move on.
all say the same thing.
Prime Minister,
about the economic effect.
Your scaremongering does not stop at the economy, does it? What comes first, World War III or the global Brexit recession?
Read my speech. The words World War III never
a risk to peace and stability
yes.
on our continent, serried rows of white headstones. How do you get from a vote to Brexit in 3 weeks' time to serried rows of white headstones? Well, can you explain the steps?
Yes, let me tell you exactly. Right, on our continent, in the last century, twice we had an enormous bloodbath between our nations. Europe's... Hang on, in the past. Again, can we be so confident that we've solved all of Europe's problems and all of Europe's tensions?
I can be confident we're not going to invade France and France is not going to invade us.
Again, you're being completely glib about it, right? Look, I sit round the European Council table. It can be immensely frustrating, but when you're there, you never forget that 70 years ago, these countries were fighting each other. I don't think we should take that for granted. Now, frankly, NATO has done the most to keep the peace in Europe, but the European Union has been a way of getting countries that used to fight each other to talk to each other.
Well, perhaps
and I don't think, no, but I think you are being incredibly glib about this. I think Does Europe help to create dialogue
You've made
in
extraordinary
Europe?
claims.
Yes,
I'm
it
not being
does.
glib. You've
No, I
made
didn't. I never.
extraordinary claims.
You
Perhaps
find,
you're the one that should be
you
fighting
read the
about
bit of the
disastrous
speech.
party management.
Find me the bit of the speech that mentions World War III.
You said
you won't find it. Come on.
You said serried rows of white headstones.
Well, there
Anyway,
are serried rows of white
move on.
headstones in
Let's
Europe
move-
because
Listen,
twice in a century Europe went to war, and on both occasions Britain had to go and be part of that conflict, and we paid a very, very heavy
listen,
price.
I've heard you this evening, and let me make a suggestion that you failed to hit that migration target. You failed to get a deal that would allow you to meet this migration target. You failed to, in your party management too. So you've reached for a classic Cameron fear campaign. It worked in the Scottish referendum, it worked in the general election campaign when you used the Scots to scare the English. And you're trying it again, but this time, it's not working.
I just don't accept that.
Right, so you should have seen the video from David Cameron. Now, he's not the only one who's pushing out that vibration. You got George Soros also saying that a Brexit could or will trigger an EU collapse, but he said at the end of the piece he doesn't believe that Britain would leave the EU or vote, because really what we're talking about is voting to leave the EU rather than Britain actually leaving the EU. It's just a referendum at this stage.
Investors, and more particularly investors in London. This is the Brexit issue, and billionaire investor George Soros today issued a stern warning over the possibility of Britain leaving the Eurozone. Soros said, and I quote, "If Britain leaves, it could unleash a general exodus, and the disintegration of the European Union will become practically unavoidable." End of quote. However, he goes on to say, and I quote again, "I'm confident that as we get closer to the Brexit vote, the Remain camp will get stronger. Markets are not always right, but in this case, I agree with them." End of quote.
But we know that a lot of the economy is based upon confidence and the effect that the media have on the confidence of different peoples and investors in the system. Okay, and a panic can be brought about very easily based upon an event such as this. All right, so this to me is all a giant psychological operation. Okay, fostering this nationalistic viewpoint in these different nations, and then bringing about chaos and destruction and blaming it on nationalism, and then they can achieve the synthesis which they want, which is a new world order. Okay, see, you gotta understand that, like I said, when the things you see going on the TV, a lot of the time it's all scripted, man. There's a purpose behind it that may not be obvious to the average person, because the average person doesn't know the agenda. But when you understand the agenda, then you can see the moves. It's just like anything, man. Once you know someone's agenda, once you know their end goal, then you know that whatever they do, whether they move left or right or backward, ultimately they're doing it in the end to get to that position you know that they want to be at. Okay, now this is the book of Genesis 3:1. It says, "Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden." So we know the serpent here is speaking about the so-called white men in the reincarnation, and they are the most subtle of all the people. They're very good at deceiving. They've spent a lot of time and money and research in how to deceive people en masse. Okay, how to work psychological operations on the masses, just like all these presidential elections. They're just mass psychological operations, man. The Trump and Hillary Clinton is just a giant psychological operation, man. Trump is playing the part of the nationalist. He's a nationalist, man. And what do we see? All of a sudden, worldwide, we see the rise of nationalism, and Esau ain't trying to so much stop it. He's utilizing it as part of his Hegelian dialectic. Alright, now Psalms 64:5 says, "They encourage themselves in an evil matter. They commune of laying snares privily. They say, Who shall see them?" Okay, these psychological operations that they're setting up to bring in this new world order are snares, man, that they've set privately. This whole Brexit thing is a snare that they've set privately. This thing was already planned, going back to when Cameron promised that the people would get a referendum. That was damn near 8 years ago. And how come it's taking them until now to do that? Okay, it says they search out iniquities, they accomplish a diligent search. Both the inward thought of every one of them and the heart is deep. Meaning what? They're playing chess, they ain't playing checkers. Okay. Now when you go into psychological operations, psychological or PSYOP are planned operations to convey selected information. Like when Cameron was speaking about the World War III and economic collapse, that's a psychological operation. He planted a seed in the mind of the people. Even though you had some people laughing it up, he still planted that seed in the mind of the people. Okay. And selecting information and indicators to audience to influence their emotions, motives, and objective reasoning, and ultimately the behavior of governments, organizations, groups, and individuals. Alright. Now you're gonna find out that right here in London and England is pretty much the home of Esau's psychological operations. You got an institute over here called the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, and that's one of the top schools of psychological warfare. Alright, so what you see going on the BBC and Sky News and all these different newspapers, man, is coming straight out of the Tavistock Institute, man. And they got these people wrapped around their little finger. Okay, this is the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. It says this group was formed at Oxford University, London, by the Royal Institute of International Affairs in 1922. Major John Rawlins Rees, a British Army technician, was instructed to set up the largest brainwashing facility in the world at the Tavistock Institute for Human Relations as a part of Sussex University. This became the core of Britain's Psychological Warfare Bureau. Because you gotta understand that Britain, the British Empire, they didn't only rule by the sword, they also ruled through deception. They were very good at running psychological operations and dividing the people that they were ruling. You know what I'm saying? It says in fact I believe the CIA, they got a lot of what they do from the British, from MI6 and MI5. Alright. It says this became the core of Britain's Psychological Warfare Bureau. It was Tavistock designed methods that got the United States into the Second World War, and which, under the guidance of Dr. Kurt Lewin, established the OSS, the forerunner of the CIA. Lewin became the director of the Strategic Bombing Survey, which was a plan for the Royal Air Force to concentrate on bombing German worker housing while leaving military targets, such as munition plants alone. The munition plants on both sides belonged to the international bankers who had no wish to see their assets destroyed. The idea behind saturation bombing of civilian worker housing was to break the morale of the German worker. It was not designed to affect the war effort against the German military machine. Lewin and his team of actuaries reached the target figure that if 65% of German worker housing was destroyed by nightly RAF bombing, the morale of the civilian population would collapse. The actual document was prepared by the Prudential Assurance Company. The RAF, under the command of Bomber Harris, carried out Lewin's plans, culminating in the terror firestorm bombing of Dresden, in which over 125,000, mainly old men, women and children, were killed. So they like to talk about the Germans being war criminals. Well, that would make the British war criminals by purposely targeting the civilian population. But they ain't gonna talk about that. They ain't gonna put that in their Hollywood films, which are, again, is all psychological operations, man. Psyops, deception, witchcraft. The truth of Bomber Harris's horror raids on German civilians was a well-kept secret until long after the end of World War II. Today, its primary mission is to establish a global brainwashing and opinion-forming network. This institute is the originator of the Aquarian conspiracy designed to weaken the nations of the world by encouraging drug use, free sex, homosexuality, and lesbianism. Okay, and what's the main way they do that? Through the media. They do it through the media, and then secondly, they also do it through these NGOs, these non-governmental organizations like these charities and so forth. It's all psychological operations, and thirdly, they do it through the government. Okay, because they also control these governments. It has been very successful in the United States, and you better believe they got a psychological operation going on out there to get the people to accept the mark of the beast. Okay, that's why you see it in the films, games, and whatever. It works through many research institutes and think tanks. The principal ones in the United States are the Stanford Research Institute, Rand Research and Development Corporation, the Institute for Policy Studies, the Aspen Institute, the Hudson Institute, and the Brookings Institute. Tavistock runs over 30 research institutions in the United States. These Tavistock US institutions have in many cases grown into gargantuan monsters, penetrating every aspect of our government agencies and taking command of all policy making. One of Tavistock's chief wreckers of our way of life was Dr. Alexander King, a founder member of NATO and a favorite with the Committee of 300, as well as an outstanding member of the Club of Rome. When it was decided that a super body would control European affairs, the RIIA founded the Tavistock Institute, which in turn created NATO. For 5 years, NATO was financed by the German Marshall Fund. Dr. King was assigned by the Club of Rome to destroy America's education by taking control of the National Teachers Association and working in close conjunction with certain lawmakers and judges. Scientists engaged in the process of conditioning are called social engineers or new science social scientists, and they play an integral part in what we see, hear, and read. So that includes what David Cameron was saying. The old school social engineers were Kurt K. Lewin, Professor Hadley Cantrell, Margaret Mead, Professor Derwin Cartwright, and Professor Lipset, who, together with John Rawlins Rees, made up the backbone of new science scientists at Tavistock Institute. So the point I'm making to you is that this thing is going down, man, and Esau is setting the scene because he wants to manipulate the events which are about to go on, the chaos, in order for him to synthesize that new world order. Okay, he wants to bring in this chaos, but he ain't gonna have himself be the scapegoat or to be blamed. That's pretty much why they've been telling the people, which is another psychological operations, repeatedly for the last well, in 2016 to 2008 was 8 years ago, right? They've been telling the people for the last 8 years that there's been a recovery in the economy, which is a lie. Okay, because when this economy finally crashes, they already know who they gonna blame it on. You know, when this World War III occurs, this World War III has been in the making for a long time, but they already know what they're gonna blame it on, because they always do that. Even going back to World War II, they blame World War II on a specific thing, which is nationalism, and they blame World War I on the same thing, which is why out of World War I and out of World War II, what did they get? The League of Nations and the UN, and the same psychological operation is being run all over again. Now, Lord will, I'm going to get more into this and other information tomorrow night, Lord will, on the GMS London news report, and we're going to bring out more information on the Brexit and all that, and also other information and news regarding the signs of the coming of our Lord, man, and these prophecies coming to pass. You know what I'm saying? But with that, I'm gonna just say shalom, and you know, brother, stay up, man. You know, Yahweh Shai is faithful and he liveth forevermore. Shalom.